The Navy SEAL had faced death more times than he could count, but when he heard a faint cry buried under the snow, he had no idea that stopping to help would destroy the life he knew, and rebuild it in a way no battlefield ever could. He was trained to walk away from anything that slowed him down, but that night, in the middle of a deadly snowstorm, a single sound forced a Navy SEAL to make a choice that would haunt him forever if he ignored it. The Navy SEAL had survived gunfire, explosions, and missions no one would ever know about. But as he knelt in the frozen wilderness and heard a faint whimper beneath the snow, his hands began to shake in a way they never had before. Ethan Cole had learned long ago how to shut off fear. It was a skill drilled into him over years of brutal training, combat deployments, and loss. Fear was a luxury soldiers couldn't afford. But on that night, standing alone in the Rockies with the wind slicing through his jacket like knives, fear crept back in, not for himself, but for something helpless, buried, and running out of time. He wasn't on a mission anymore. The Navy had discharged him 6 months earlier, quietly, without ceremony. Too many tours. Too many ghosts. Too many nights waking up with his heart racing and his fists clenched. The mountains were supposed to be his escape. A place where the noise in his head would finally go quiet. The snowstorm wasn't in the forecast. It came fast, swallowing the trail, erasing his footprints, turning the world into a white blur. Ethan was already turning back when he heard it, a sound so weak it could have been the wind, so broken it barely sounded alive. A whimper. Ethan froze. Every instinct screamed to keep moving. Hypothermia didn't care how tough you were. But the sound came again, closer this time, sharper. A plea. He followed it off the trail, sinking knee-deep into snow, scanning the ground like he'd once scanned rooftops overseas. That's when he saw it, a collapsed snowbank near a fallen tree, disturbed just enough to suggest something beneath it. He dropped to his knees and started digging with his bare hands. The cold burned like fire. His fingers went numb within seconds, but he didn't stop. He clawed through ice and packed snow until his hands struck fur. A German shepherd. The dog was trapped, its hind leg pinned beneath the tree, chest barely rising. Its eyes opened slowly, clouded with pain and exhaustion, but when they met Ethan's, something changed. Not fear. Not aggression. Trust. "You're okay," Ethan whispered, though he had no idea if that was true. "I've got you." He worked fast, using techniques drilled into him years ago: assess, stabilize, act. He shifted the branch just enough to free the dog's leg. The shepherd cried out, then fell silent, its body going limp. For one terrifying moment, Ethan thought he was too late. He wrapped the dog in his thermal blanket, pressing his own body against it, sharing warmth as the storm howled around them. Minutes stretched into eternity. Then, barely noticeable, the dog breathed again, slow, shallow, but alive. Ethan laughed, a sound he hadn't made in years. It came out broken, half sob, half relief. Getting out nearly killed him. He carried the dog for miles, slipping, falling, pushing past pain and exhaustion until the lights of a ranger station appeared through the snow. By the time help arrived, Ethan collapsed. As he drifted into darkness, he felt something warm against his chest, a nose, a breath, a life refusing to fade. And for the first time since leaving the battlefield, Ethan didn't feel alone. Saving the German shepherd was supposed to be the end of the story. But weeks later, when the dog placed itself between the SEAL and a loaded gun, he realized the rescue had only just begun. Ethan thought saving the dog would be the end of the story. But weeks later, when the shepherd stood between him and a loaded gun, he realized the rescue had only just begun. The dog survived. The vet said it was a miracle. Severe frost exposure, a fractured leg, dehydration, any one of those could have ended its life. Ethan visited every day, sitting quietly beside the kennel, saying nothing, just being there. He named the dog Shadow. Shadow followed Ethan home 2 months later, walking with a slight limp, eyes always watching. The bond between them formed without words, two warriors scarred by different battles, learning how to exist again. But healing wasn't simple. Ethan still woke up at night, drenched in sweat, heart pounding. Shadow would rise silently and press his weight against Ethan's chest, grounding him, pulling him back from memories that refused to let go. Then one night, everything cracked. Ethan sat alone in his cabin, the silence louder than any gunfire. The thoughts came fast and dark. The weight of everything he'd lost pressed down until breathing felt impossible. His hand trembled as he reached for the locked drawer beneath the table. Shadow noticed immediately. The dog stepped between Ethan and the drawer, teeth bared, not in anger, but desperation. Shadow barked, sharp and loud, something he'd never done before. When Ethan tried to push past him, Shadow stood firm, eyes locked onto his, refusing to move. Something broke inside Ethan. He collapsed to the floor, sobbing harder than he ever had in his life. Shadow leaned into him, licking his face, staying until the storm inside Ethan finally passed. The next morning, Ethan called for help. Months later, Ethan volunteered with the search and rescue unit. Shadow became certified, his limp now just a reminder of how close he'd come to disappearing forever. Together they saved hikers, lost children, stranded climbers. People called them heroes. Ethan knew better. Sometimes he'd stand at the edge of the forest, watching Shadow run through the snow, strong and alive. He'd think about that night, the storm, the whimper, the choice to stop when everything said keep going. He realized the truth then. He hadn't just saved a dog. The dog had saved him. And in a world that often feels cold and unforgiving, sometimes all it takes to change everything is answering a call beneath the snow.